A homeless Navy SEAL bought the town's most worthless drive-in, but his K-9 uncovered a secret powerful men would kill to bury. Logan Mercer had nothing left except an old military rucksack, an aging German shepherd named Titan, and a few $100s. When the whole town laughed as he bought a forgotten drive-in at a tax auction, nobody noticed Titan refusing to leave the cracked screen. Buried beneath decades of silence was a hidden fortune, a fallen commander's final mission, and a truth that would change an entire community forever. Comment 1 if you'd follow your instincts like Titan, or 0 if you think Logan should have walked away, and tell us where you're watching from. At exactly 9 o'clock on a crisp September morning, the county annex in Silver Ridge, Montana, was already filled with the familiar sounds of people chasing bargains. Boots scraped against old wooden floors. Coffee cups clinked. Auction catalogs rustled beneath weathered hands. Outside, beyond the courthouse windows, the Rocky Mountains stood like silent guardians beneath a sky so blue it almost looked painted. Golden aspens shimmered in the cold breeze, while distant snow still clung to the highest ridges. It was the kind of place where everybody knew everybody, and where strangers rarely stayed strangers for long. Which was why every pair of eyes quietly drifted toward the tall man standing alone near the back wall. He wore faded jeans tucked into worn combat boots that had crossed deserts and mountains long before they crossed Montana streets. His green canvas military rucksack rested at his feet, its fabric faded by years of use. Nothing about him looked expensive, but everything about him looked durable. Beside him sat an aging German shepherd. The dog's muzzle had turned silver around the nose, and tiny scars marked both ears, souvenirs from years spent where most people would never willingly go. Though older now, his amber eyes never stopped moving, calmly studying every doorway, every face, every shifting shadow. His name was Titan. He wasn't simply Logan Mercer's dog. He had once been his partner, his teammate, his reason for making it home. Logan rested one hand gently on Titan's neck. The old dog leaned into it without taking his eyes off the room. The auctioneer shuffled another stack of paperwork before adjusting his glasses. We'll move on to tax-delinquent properties. Several bidders straightened in their seats. Now the room became interested. Land meant opportunity. Opportunity meant money. The auction rolled through abandoned cabins, storage buildings, forgotten parcels of farmland, and foreclosed workshops. Hands rose quickly. Numbers climbed. Deals were made in seconds. Logan remained silent. His eyes stayed fixed on one line inside the auction booklet. Parcel 17, Silver Ridge Drive-In Theater. 11 acres. Closed for 16 years. Structures condemned. Utilities disconnected. Property sold as is. Estimated restoration cost exceeded market value. A handwritten note beside the listing simply read, "No commercial interest." Logan folded the booklet closed. That single sentence was exactly why he had come. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Next, he flipped the page. Parcel 17. The former Silver Ridge Drive-In. A few quiet chuckles immediately floated across the room. Someone muttered loudly enough for others to hear. Still trying to unload that dump. Another voice answered. Wouldn't take it if they paid me. The auctioneer continued. 11 acres, original drive-in theater, projection booth, snack bar, main screen structure. He looked over the room. We'll open bidding at $200. Silence. Absolute silence. Even the auctioneer waited longer than normal. Nobody reached for a bidding paddle. Nobody whispered. Nobody even pretended to consider it. A rancher near the front scratched his beard, screens about ready to fall over. His neighbor nodded. Insurance alone would bury you. Another man laughed. Ghosts probably own the place by now. More laughter followed. The auctioneer tried again. 200? Nothing. He sighed. 100? Still nothing. He looked almost embarrassed. Titan slowly stood, his ears turned toward the courthouse windows as though hearing something only he could detect. Logan watched him for a brief moment, then calmly raised his hand. I'll take it. Every head turned. Someone actually blinked twice. The auctioneer stared over his glasses. You understand this property has no operating utilities. I do. The buildings are considered unsafe. I understand. The county assumes no responsibility for structural failure. Logan nodded once. I heard you. The auctioneer hesitated. His voice softened. Son, you sure? Logan looked down at Titan. The old German shepherd quietly sat beside him again. Then Logan answered. Yes. The auctioneer searched the room one last time. $100. Silence. Any higher? Nothing. Going once. A woman near the aisle leaned toward her husband. Poor fella. Going twice. Nobody moved. Sold. The gavel struck the wood. Its sharp crack echoed through the annex. The room immediately filled with quiet conversations. Not about the property, about Logan. People weren't laughing because they hated him. They laughed because nothing he had done made sense. One elderly rancher shook his head as Logan walked toward the clerk's desk. He just bought himself 16 years of problems. Another replied, more than 16. The young county clerk counted Logan's carefully folded bills. 120, 220s, 310s, $5 bills, single dollars. Everything arranged with military precision. She finished counting before sliding a receipt across the counter. You've got, she paused, $183 left. Logan accepted the paperwork. That's enough, she looked up. You're really going out there today? Yes. The drive-in's been empty longer than some kids in this town have been alive. Logan smiled politely. I've slept in worse places. She couldn't argue with that. Instead, she lowered her voice. She hesitated. If anyone suddenly becomes interested in buying it from you. She stopped. Don't rush. Logan frowned slightly. What do you mean? The clerk forced a smile. Nothing. She stamped the deed. Congratulations. Outside, cold mountain air rushed into his lungs. Titan stepped into the sunlight first. The courthouse doors closed behind them. Silver Ridge looked exactly like the kind of town postcards tried to imitate. Brick storefronts, American flags hanging from light poles, flower boxes beneath second-story windows, pickup trucks lined along Main Street. Far beyond town, mountains wrapped themselves in pine forests, stretching toward endless wilderness. It was beautiful, quiet, almost untouched. Logan adjusted the heavy rucksack onto his shoulders. 3 miles. Titan glanced up. We've walked farther. The old dog wagged his tail once. They followed the gravel road leading west. Traffic disappeared after the last farmhouse. Telephone poles grew farther apart. The pavement became dirt. Mountains rose larger with every step. Nearly an hour later, Logan rounded a bend, then stopped walking. There it was, the Silver Ridge Drive-In. Time had nearly erased it. Rust covered every speaker pole scattered across the empty field. Tall grass swallowed the old parking lanes. The snack bar leaned slightly to one side, several windows boarded over. The projection booth stood high above everything else like an abandoned watchtower. But nothing dominated the landscape more than the screen. It towered nearly 60 feet into the Montana sky. White paint had long since turned gray. A massive crack ran from near the top almost halfway down its center. Wind whistled through broken steel supports hidden behind weathered concrete. It looked less like a movie screen, and more like the wall of an abandoned fortress. Logan slowly approached the locked front gate. The county had written the padlock combination on the back of his receipt. He spun the numbers. The lock clicked. The chain slid free. He pushed. The gate groaned open. For several long seconds, neither he nor Titan moved. "This is ours now," Logan quietly said. Titan stepped through first. His pace slowed almost immediately. His nose lowered toward the ground. He ignored the snack bar, ignored the projection booth, ignored the weeds. Instead, he walked directly toward the towering screen. Straight, purposefully, as though following a trail invisible to human eyes. Logan watched with quiet curiosity. "Find something?" Titan never looked back. He reached the enormous concrete foundation supporting the screen, then stopped, perfectly still. His ears stood forward. His body became rigid. He stared at one specific section near the center of the base. Not barking, not growling, simply staring. Seconds passed, then another. Logan walked closer. "What is it?" Titan lowered his nose. He sniffed once, twice, then gently placed one paw against the weathered concrete. Not scratching, touching, almost pointing. Logan examined the wall. Nothing. Only cracked concrete stained by decades of rain. He knocked against it with his knuckles. Solid. He walked several feet in either direction. Still nothing unusual. Titan. The dog didn't move. Logan smiled faintly. "You've always been stubborn." The German Shepherd remained exactly where he was, watching the wall, watching, waiting. High above them, wind swept across the giant abandoned screen. It produced a deep, hollow sound that rolled through the empty valley like the echo of distant thunder. Logan looked up, then back toward Titan. The old K9 had survived explosions, gunfire, mountain warfare, night raids. He had never pointed at something without reason. Logan rested one hand against the cold concrete. "I don't know what you're trying to tell me, partner." His voice nearly disappeared beneath the mountain wind, but I learned a long time ago. He looked down into Titan's unwavering eyes. "When you stop, I pay attention." Far above them, unseen beneath layers of cracked concrete and rusted steel, something remained hidden in the darkness. Waiting. Exactly where Titan refused to leave. Logan stood beside the giant screen for another full minute, letting the silence settle around him. The breeze carried the scent of dry grass and pine from the surrounding mountains. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a hawk circled high above the valley. Everything about the abandoned drive-in felt frozen in another decade, as if the last movie had ended, but no one had ever gone home. Titan still hadn't moved. Logan finally gave the dog a gentle pat behind one ear. "We'll come back." The German Shepherd looked at him, almost reluctantly, before turning away and following him toward the snack bar. The building looked even worse up close. Half the roof sagged. Several windows had been boarded shut years ago. The faded menu painted above the serving window still advertised popcorn for 75 cents and root beer floats for $1. The lettering had nearly disappeared beneath years of Montana winters. Logan pushed against the warped back door. It refused to budge. He leaned harder. With a loud crack, swollen wood finally gave way. Dust exploded into the afternoon sunlight. Inside smelled of old grease, damp wood, and forgotten summers. Rows of empty shelves leaned crooked against peeling walls. A rusted popcorn machine still stood behind the counter. Stacks of faded paper cups remained untouched, as though someone had expected to reopen next weekend instead of 16 years later. Logan slowly walked through the room. military habit. Every doorway, every corner, every possible exit. PTSD never truly announced itself. Sometimes it arrived quietly, like muscle memory. He noticed himself checking blind spots before realizing what he was doing. Again. He let out a slow breath. "You can stand down." Titan quietly watched him. The dog understood that sentence better than most people ever had. Behind the concession area, Logan found a narrow hallway leading to 2 storage rooms and a tiny office. Most of the ceiling had collapsed, but one room remained mostly intact. It wasn't much. Concrete floor, one small window, a sink that hadn't worked in years, but the roof still held. Logan dropped his rucksack against one wall. "I've slept in worse." That wasn't an exaggeration. Afghanistan had taught him how comfortable solid concrete could feel. He unrolled an old military blanket. Titan immediately circled twice before lying beside it. Within seconds, the old dog had positioned himself facing the doorway. Always guarding, always watching. Logan smiled faintly. You never quit. Neither of them did. As evening settled over the mountains, the temperature dropped quickly. Without electricity, darkness arrived fast inside the drive-in. Logan gathered fallen branches near the parking lanes and built a small fire ring outside the snack bar. He heated canned beans over a portable camping stove he'd carried since leaving Seattle nearly 8 months earlier. Titan waited patiently. Logan opened another can. "This one's yours." The German Shepherd accepted dinner with quiet gratitude before lying down beside the fire. For several peaceful minutes, neither soldier spoke. Neither needed to. The mountains filled the silence. Crickets began singing. Pine trees whispered beneath the evening wind. For the first time in weeks, Logan wasn't wondering where he would sleep tomorrow. That thought alone felt strange. He stared toward the giant screen glowing silver beneath the rising moon. Home. The word felt unfamiliar, almost dangerous, because every place he'd called home before had eventually disappeared. His childhood farmhouse in western Pennsylvania had been sold after his father died. The small military house he'd shared with his wife had been emptied after divorce papers arrived while he was overseas. His SEAL barracks had belonged to the Navy. Even the veterans' shelter where he'd stayed last winter had eventually asked him to move along. Nothing lasted. Nothing stayed. Except Titan. The old dog lifted his head. His ears suddenly stood straight. Then, without warning, he got up. Logan watched him quietly walk away from the fire, straight toward the giant screen again. Not running, not excited, simply returning. The same place, the same section of concrete. Again. Logan sighed softly. "What is it, partner?" Titan lowered his nose to the ground. He sniffed carefully, then rested one paw against the concrete foundation exactly where he had stood earlier. Logan walked over with a flashlight. The beam swept across weathered concrete. Cracks, old stains, nothing more. He crouched lower, ran his fingers across the rough surface. Still nothing. After nearly 5 minutes, he stood. "I don't see it." Titan looked up at him, then back at the wall, almost disappointed. Eventually, Logan convinced him to return to the fire. But even while lying beside the flames, Titan kept watching the screen. Sleep didn't come easily. It rarely did anymore. The nightmares usually waited until exhaustion finally lowered every defense. Tonight was no different. The first explosion came without warning. The mountain valley vanished. Darkness became smoke, dust, gunfire. Someone yelled his name over the radio. Then another voice, louder, closer. "Mercer!" The explosion threw him backward. Heat, metal, blood. Commander Nathan Cross shouting orders. Someone screaming for a medic. Titan barking somewhere through the smoke. Then, silence. Logan jerked awake. His heart hammered against his ribs, every muscle already prepared for combat. The room remained dark. Only moonlight slipped through broken boards covering the windows. Titan stood beside him. The old German shepherd gently pressed his head against Logan's shoulder, exactly as he had done overseas, grounding him, bringing him back. Logan closed his eyes. "I'm here." Titan stayed close. "I'm here." The words weren't for the dog. They were for himself. Several long breaths later, the panic slowly loosened its grip. Logan rubbed Titan's neck. "You always know." The dog's tail thumped softly once against the concrete floor. Morning arrived wrapped in golden mountain sunlight. The drive-in looked less haunted beneath daylight, still abandoned, still broken. But somehow, possible. Logan spent the next several hours clearing weeds around the snack bar entrance. Military discipline made every task feel manageable. One square at a time, one pile at a time, one mission at a time. Near noon, he heard tires crunch across gravel. Titan noticed first. The German shepherd calmly stood but didn't bark. An aging blue pickup slowly rolled through the open gate. It stopped near the snack bar. The driver climbed out carefully. He looked to be in his 70s, lean, weathered, gray beard neatly trimmed. His denim jacket carried decades of honest work. The old man removed his cap before speaking. "You Logan Mercer?" "Yes, sir." The stranger nodded once. "I figured you would be." Logan waited. The man looked around the abandoned property for a long moment. His eyes lingered on the cracked screen. There was sadness there, the kind only memory creates. "My name's Ruth Harper." Logan looked surprised. The old man smiled. "Not me." He chuckled. "Ruth owns the diner in town." He pointed toward himself. "I'm Walter Boone." Recognition flickered across Logan's face. "The projectionist?" Walter smiled again. "So somebody still remembers. I saw your name on an old newspaper clipping inside the office." Walter looked genuinely pleased. "Guess they never threw everything away." Titan quietly walked over. Walter crouched slowly. Instead of reaching for the dog, he simply waited. Titan sniffed his hand, then gently leaned forward. Walter scratched behind one ear. "Well," he whispered, "you're still making friends faster than soldiers do." Logan noticed something. Titan almost never trusted strangers immediately. Walter looked toward the giant screen, then toward Titan. The old man's expression slowly changed. His smile disappeared. "He's been standing there?" Logan nodded. "Since yesterday." Walter looked thoughtful. "The same spot?" "Every time." Walter stared toward the concrete foundation for several seconds, then quietly asked, "He scratch at it?" Logan frowned. "How did you know that?" Walter's eyes never left the screen. "Because..." His voice became almost a whisper. "That's where Mr. Hollis used to disappear." Logan blinked. "Disappear?" Walter finally looked back at him. "The old owner." He paused. "Last year before he died." Walter lowered his voice even further. He kept telling folks there was something beneath that screen worth protecting. The breeze moved gently through the empty speaker poles. Walter adjusted his cap. Nobody believed him. He looked down at Titan. "But maybe..." His eyes returned to the concrete wall. "Your partner does." The words lingered in the cool mountain air. Logan followed Walter's gaze back to the towering screen. Titan stood perfectly still beneath it, his amber eyes fixed on the weathered concrete, as though he were standing watch over a fallen teammate. Walter slowly walked across the overgrown lot. His boots brushed through knee-high weeds that had swallowed the old parking lanes years before. Rusted speaker posts leaned at crooked angles, each one a silent reminder of families who had once gathered beneath Montana's summer skies. When he reached Titan, he stopped several feet away. "I haven't seen a dog do that since Arthur was alive." "Arthur Hollis?" Logan asked. Walter nodded. "He owned this place longer than anybody else." "You knew him well?" "For nearly 30 years. Walter smiled sadly. "I ran the projectors every Friday and Saturday night." Arthur sold the tickets. His wife, Evelyn, worked the snack bar. He looked around the empty field. There were nights you couldn't find a parking space. Logan tried to imagine it. Children laughing, headlights filling the valley, the smell of popcorn floating through the mountain air. It felt impossible. Now there was only silence. Walter rested one hand on one of the old speaker poles. After Evelyn passed away, his voice became quieter. Arthur changed. Logan listened without interrupting. He stopped smiling. He stopped opening on weekdays. Then he stopped opening altogether. Walter looked toward the mountains. People thought he couldn't let go. Maybe he couldn't. Titan suddenly lowered his nose again. This time he sniffed faster, more intensely. Then he scratched once at the concrete. A short scrape, nothing more. Walter noticed immediately. "There." Logan looked down. "What?" "That." Walter pointed. He always scratched before he looked. Logan frowned. "Who?" "The dog Arthur used to have." Logan blinked. "He had a German shepherd?" Walter nodded. "Best dog I'd ever seen." "What happened to him?" "No one knows." Walter sighed. "After Arthur died, the dog disappeared." Titan sniffed again. Another scratch. The sound echoed softly against the giant wall. Logan crouched beside him. "What are you smelling?" Titan pressed his nose against a narrow crack running through the old concrete foundation. The crack wasn't large, barely wide enough to slide a coin into. Logan ran his fingers across it. Cold, solid, nothing unusual. Walter slowly shook his head. "I've walked past this wall 1,000 times. You ever hear Arthur talk about hiding something?" Logan asked. "Not exactly." Walter rubbed the back of his neck. "He used to say strange things near the end." "Like what?" "Some promises have to stay underground until the right hands find them." Walter gave an awkward laugh. We all figured grief had gotten the better of him. Logan looked toward Titan again. "I'm starting to wonder." The afternoon passed with work. Walter insisted on helping. Together they dragged fallen branches away from the parking lanes. They cleared brush from around the snack bar. They swept years of leaves from the projection booth stairs. Neither man talked much. They didn't have to. Years of military discipline had taught Logan that good people didn't always fill silence with words. Sometimes they simply worked beside you. By sunset, the property looked only slightly better, but it looked alive. Walter climbed the projection booth steps with surprising energy for a man his age. "You ought to see this." Logan followed. Inside, dust covered everything. The projector stood where it had always stood. Massive steel reels, heavy gears, thick lenses clouded by years of neglect. Walter rested one weathered hand on the machine. "I spent more nights with this projector than I did in my own living room." Logan smiled. "Think it'll ever run again?" Walter chuckled. If they built them today, no. He gently spun one wheel. The mechanism moved, slowly, but smoothly. They built these when people expected machines to outlive them. Logan looked around. Movie posters still clung to one wall. Most had faded beyond recognition. An old calendar hung near the doorway. The last month marked was August, 16 years earlier. It felt as though time had simply stopped. Walter looked through the projection window toward the giant screen. You know what I miss most? What? The first light. Logan waited. Every spring. Walter smiled at the memory. Arthur would stand right down there. He pointed toward the center of the empty lot. And I'd fire up the projector. The screen would glow white. No movie. No sound. Just light. Walter's eyes glistened. He always said a drive-in wasn't alive until the first light hit the screen. Logan looked across the empty field. The mountains beyond glowed orange beneath the setting sun. It must have been something. Walter nodded. It was. That evening, Walter headed back toward town. I'll bring some tools tomorrow. You don't have to. I know. Walter smiled. I want to. He climbed into his truck and... Logan? Yes? If Titan keeps pointing at that wall... Walter paused. Don't ignore him. I've learned better than that. Walter laughed softly. I figured. The truck disappeared down the gravel road. Silence returned. Night settled over Silver Ridge. Stars filled the Montana sky. Without city lights, the heavens looked endless. Logan heated another simple meal over his camp stove. Titan barely touched his food. Instead, he stood. Again, the same direction, the same wall. Logan finally gave in. All right. He grabbed his flashlight. Show me. Titan immediately started walking. Not fast. Confident, certain. The flashlight beam swept across the cracked concrete. Titan stopped at the exact same spot. He sniffed, then scratched. Twice. Logan leaned closer. The beam caught something. Not on the wall. Near the ground. He brushed away dirt with his boot. A narrow strip of rusted steel appeared beneath years of packed soil. His heartbeat quickened. He knelt. Using both hands, he cleared more earth. The steel continued beneath the weeds. Straight. Perfectly straight. Like the edge of something man-made. A drainage cover, he whispered. Titan whined softly. Logan knocked against the exposed metal. Instead of solid concrete, a hollow sound answered. He froze. Hollow. He struck it again. The same echo. His pulse quickened. There was empty space beneath. Before he could investigate further, Titan suddenly stiffened. His ears shot forward, low, dangerously low. A growl rolled deep inside his chest, not toward the metal, toward the trees. Logan instantly switched off the flashlight. Years of training took over before conscious thought. He crouched, listening. The forest beyond the drive-in had become unnaturally quiet. Even the crickets had stopped. Then, a branch snapped. Far beyond the parking lanes, someone, or something, was moving in the darkness. Titan stepped in front of Logan without hesitation. His growl deepened. Logan's eyes searched the tree line. The moonlight revealed nothing except endless pines swaying gently in the mountain breeze. Another snap, closer this time. Logan waited. 30 seconds. 1 minute. Nothing emerged. Finally, the forest grew quiet again. The crickets slowly returned. Titan stopped growling, but he never took his eyes off the trees. Logan looked back down at the strip of buried steel. Whatever lay beneath the screen, someone else might already know it was there. He carefully covered the exposed metal with dirt again. Not yet. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow they would come back with tools. As he and Titan slowly walked toward the snack bar, neither of them noticed a faint glimmer of reflected moonlight far beyond the tree line. For only a brief second, it looked almost like someone lowering a pair of binoculars. Then the darkness swallowed everything once again. Logan stood motionless for several more seconds. Old instincts refused to let him dismiss what he had seen. In another life, hesitation had gotten people hurt. His breathing slowed. His eyes searched the tree line one section at a time. Nothing moved. Only the tops of the pines swayed gently beneath the moonlight. Titan remained planted between Logan and the forest. The old German shepherd's ears stayed forward, every muscle alert. Finally, Logan rested a hand against the dog's shoulder. "Let's get inside." Titan obeyed, but he glanced over his shoulder 3 different times before entering the snack bar. That told Logan everything. The danger, real or imagined, hadn't left the dog's mind. Neither had it left his. Morning arrived beneath thick gray clouds. The bright Montana sunshine from the day before had vanished. Heavy air settled across the valley. The mountains disappeared behind low-hanging mist. Logan stepped outside carrying a mug of instant coffee. Titan immediately walked toward the giant screen. Again. Same pace. Same destination. Same section of concrete. Logan couldn't help smiling. "You don't give up." Titan answered by placing one paw exactly where he always did. Walter's blue pickup rolled through the front gate shortly after 8. The retired projectionist climbed out carrying a toolbox, a shovel, and a rolled-up set of weathered blueprints. "I figured we'd need more than conversation today." Logan accepted the shovel. "You came prepared?" Walter grinned. "I've spent 30 years fixing old things." He looked toward Titan. "And I've learned not to argue with good dogs." The 3 of them walked toward the towering screen. Walter unfolded the brittle blueprints across the hood of his truck. Most of the paper had yellowed with age. Corners had been repaired with tape decades earlier. Logan studied the faded lines. "This is the original construction?" Walter nodded. 1958. He traced one finger beneath the base of the screen. "There." Logan leaned closer. "What am I looking at?" Walter frowned. "There should have been a maintenance corridor. I don't see one. Neither do I." Walter scratched his beard. It was supposed to run beneath the center support. But he tapped the paper. Someone covered it up. Logan looked toward the concrete foundation. "You think that's what Titan found?" Walter didn't answer immediately. Instead, he folded the blueprint closed. "I think somebody wanted people to forget it existed." The sky rumbled softly overhead. Far beyond the mountains, thunder rolled. Logan looked up. "Storm's coming." Walter nodded. "We've got a couple hours." The 2 men began clearing weeds around the narrow strip of buried steel Logan had uncovered the night before. Titan stayed close, watching, waiting. Within an hour, they exposed nearly 6 feet of rusted metal, buried beneath decades of packed dirt. Walter wiped sweat from his forehead. "That's no drainage cover." Logan agreed. "It runs perfectly straight." Walter struck it gently with the back of his shovel. The sound echoed beneath the concrete. Hollow. Both men exchanged a look. "There really is something under here," Logan quietly said. Before either could continue digging, thunder cracked much closer. Wind swept across the valley. Within minutes, the calm morning transformed. Dark clouds swallowed the sunlight. The temperature dropped almost 10 degrees. Walter looked toward the mountains. We need to get off this ground. Rain began falling. First a few scattered drops, then a steady curtain. Logan quickly gathered the blueprints while Walter packed the tools. Titan refused to move. The dog stood directly beneath the screen, looking upward. His ears flattened. His body stiffened. Titan! The German shepherd barked once. A sharp, urgent bark Logan had heard only during dangerous situations. Logan turned instinctively toward the towering screen. High above them, something groaned. A deep metallic sound. Long, slow, like an old ship twisting in rough water. Walter's face drained of color. Oh no. The crack running down the center of the giant screen widened with an ugly grinding noise. Years of rust, years of snow, years of neglect, finally giving way. "Logan!" Walter shouted. "Move!" Logan took one step backward. Too late. A massive steel support behind the concrete wall snapped with a deafening crack. The entire upper corner of the screen lurched forward. Thousands of pounds of aging concrete shifted. Time seemed to slow. Logan stared upward. There was nowhere to run. Then Titan hit him. The old German shepherd launched himself into Logan's side with every ounce of strength left in his aging body. The impact knocked Logan completely off his feet. Both soldier and dog rolled across the muddy ground. A heartbeat later, the corner of the enormous concrete facade crashed exactly where Logan had been standing. The explosion of dust, shattered concrete, and twisted steel shook the valley. Fragments of debris rained across the lot. One jagged length of rusted metal spun through the air. Logan barely had time to cover his face. Titan yelped. A sharp cry. Short, painful. Then silence. When the dust finally settled, Logan pushed himself upright. Titan! The German shepherd stood several yards away, still standing, but barely. Blood trickled down his right shoulder. A torn piece of rusted steel had sliced through his fur before burying itself in the muddy ground. Logan was beside him instantly. Easy. Titan leaned against him without making another sound. Walter hurried over. How bad? Logan carefully examined the wound. It missed the joint. He exhaled. Thank God. Rain poured harder. Together they guided Titan into the snack bar. Walter cleared the old serving counter while Logan opened the small medical kit he always carried. Military habit. Never travel without one. Titan never growled, never pulled away. He simply watched Logan with complete trust. I'm going to clean it. The dog blinked once. Logan carefully flushed the wound with sterile water. Titan flinched. That was all. Walter quietly handed over clean bandages. I've seen men complain louder over paper cuts. Logan smiled faintly. He was trained better than most men. When the bandage was finally secured, Titan rested his head in Logan's lap. Rain hammered the roof above them. For several long minutes, nobody spoke. Walter eventually broke the silence. He saved your life. Logan looked down at the old German shepherd. I know. Walter shook his head slowly. He never hesitated. Logan gently rubbed behind Titan's ears. He never has. Outside, another clap of thunder echoed across the mountains. Water dripped steadily through holes in the roof. As Logan reached for a dry towel beneath an old storage shelf, his hand brushed something loose beneath the warped wooden floorboards. He paused. The board shifted. He frowned. Walter. The old projectionist looked over. What is it? Logan knelt. Using the tip of a screwdriver, he carefully lifted the loose plank. Hidden beneath decades of dust lay a tightly rolled bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Logan slowly unwrapped it. Inside were faded architectural drawings, much newer than the originals Walter had brought. Their edges carried handwritten notes. Walter's eyes widened. I know that handwriting. You do, Arthur Hollis? He unfolded the drawings. One page showed the drive-in. Another showed the screen. Then, a final sheet. Both men stared silently. Unlike every official blueprint, this one included a narrow underground chamber beneath the center of the screen. Beside it, Arthur had written only 4 words in thick pencil. Seal after completion. Walter slowly looked up. His voice had almost disappeared. The bunker, he swallowed hard, was never part of the original drive-in. Titan, despite the fresh bandage across his shoulder, slowly raised his head. His amber eyes turned toward the giant screen outside. Then he gave one quiet, determined whine, as if reminding them he had known all along. Titan slowly pushed himself onto his feet. The bandage wrapped around his shoulder was already stained with faint traces of red, but the old German shepherd ignored the pain. His eyes remained fixed on the towering screen beyond the rain-soaked doorway. Logan gently rested a hand on the dog's neck. You've done enough. Titan looked back at him, then toward the screen again. The message was unmistakable. Not yet. Walter carefully rolled Arthur Hollis's blueprint back onto the counter. His weathered finger tapped the penciled words one more time. Seal after completion. He looked at Logan. Arthur wasn't hiding a storage room. He was hiding something he never wanted anyone to stumble across. The rain continued beating against the old roof. Outside, thunder rolled farther into the mountains. Logan studied the drawing. The hidden chamber sat directly beneath the center support of the giant screen. According to the measurements, the rusted steel strip they had uncovered wasn't a drainage grate. It was the edge of a concealed hatch. We're opening it, Logan said quietly. Walter nodded. But not today. Logan glanced toward Titan's injured shoulder. He already knew why. The old dog needed rest, and if the storm had weakened the structure above them, rushing into the excavation could turn dangerous. Military training had taught Logan that patience often saved more lives than courage. The storm finally passed during the night. Morning arrived bright and cold. Fresh snow glittered across the distant mountain peaks, while mist drifted through the pine forest surrounding the drive-in. Titan greeted the sunrise before Logan did. Despite the bandage, he walked with steady determination. He refused to limp. Logan smiled. Stubborn. Walter returned shortly after breakfast. This time his truck carried far more equipment. A portable generator, crowbars, heavy chains, shovels, a compact electric jackhammer borrowed from a contractor friend. You called in favors. Walter chuckled. When you've lived somewhere 50 years, people stop asking questions. The 3 of them crossed the field together. Titan immediately led them to the familiar section beneath the screen. Walter spread Arthur's blueprint across the hood of the truck once more. If these measurements are right. He paced carefully. The hatch should begin here. He planted a shovel into the earth and end about 6 feet over. Logan started digging. The work was slow. Packed dirt had hardened over 16 winters. Roots wrapped themselves around rusted metal. Every few inches they uncovered more of the hidden structure. After nearly 3 exhausting hours, the outline became unmistakable. A massive rectangular steel hatch, nearly 8 feet long, 5 feet wide, buried deliberately beneath soil and gravel. Walter wiped sweat from his forehead. I'll be... Logan crouched beside it. Heavy steel bolts lined each side. Every one of them had been welded over. This wasn't built to keep water out. Walter quietly agreed. It was built to keep people out. Titan sniffed along the edges, then stopped near one corner. He barked once, short, sharp. Logan cleared away another handful of dirt. A rusted iron ring appeared beneath the mud. The hatch had a handle. Walter smiled. Now we're getting somewhere. They attached a heavy chain. The other end connected to Walter's pickup. The old truck strained. Its tires spun. The steel hatch didn't move, not even an inch. Walter climbed out, shaking his head. Still sealed. Logan examined the welded bolts. We cut those. Nearly an hour later, the jackhammer finally broke through the first weld. Then another. Then another. Metal screamed beneath every strike. Titan remained only a few feet away. Watching. Waiting. Finally, Logan slipped a crowbar beneath the hatch. You ready? Walter nodded. Together they leaned with every ounce of strength they had. For one long second. Nothing happened. Then, a deep metallic groan echoed beneath the screen. The hatch shifted. Dust poured from its edges. Cold air escaped from somewhere deep below. Air that smelled untouched. Dry. Ancient. Walter stared into the narrow opening. I don't think that's seen daylight in a long time. They pried harder. The hatch slowly lifted. Heavy hinges protested after years of silence. When it finally stood open, darkness waited beneath. A steel ladder disappeared into blackness. Logan switched on his flashlight. The beam reached downward. Concrete walls. Metal shelves. A narrow corridor. No water. No collapse. The bunker remained almost perfectly preserved. Walter whispered softly, "My God." Logan looked at Titan. You coming? The old German shepherd stepped onto the ladder without hesitation. Even injured. Even tired. He descended first. Logan followed close behind. Walter came last, carefully lowering the hatch enough to keep debris from falling inside. The air underground felt surprisingly cool, dry enough that dust still coated every surface. Logan swept his flashlight slowly across the room. Shelves lined both walls, neatly organized, military organized. Metal ammunition crates sat stacked beside rows of carefully labeled film reels. Wooden boxes, leather binders, tool cabinets, a workbench. Everything remained exactly where someone had intentionally left it. Nothing looked abandoned. It looked prepared. Titan walked calmly through the bunker. He didn't sniff randomly. He moved with purpose, straight toward the far wall. There stood a large steel cabinet secured with 2 heavy padlocks. The dog sat beside it, without making a sound. Walter looked around in disbelief. I knew Arthur kept records. He picked up one of the film cans. But this. White grease pencil covered the lid. June 14th, 1998, Community Night. Walter frowned. That's not a movie title. He reached for another. Veterans Reunion, July 1999. Then another. 4th of July Celebration, 2001. Shelf after shelf held the same pattern. Not Hollywood films. The history of Silver Ridge. Its people. Its memories. Arthur had been documenting the town itself. Logan carefully opened one wooden crate. Inside lay neatly wrapped bundles of old United States currency. $20 bills, $50 bills, $100 bills, every bundle sealed inside waterproof wrapping. Walter slowly removed his glasses. I've never seen... His voice trailed away. Another crate. More cash. Another. Gold coins packed inside canvas bags. Each coin gleamed beneath the flashlight as though it had been hidden yesterday instead of years before. Logan barely noticed the fortune. His attention had shifted elsewhere. Against the far wall sat a military footlocker. Olive green. Weathered. Government issue. One corner still carried faded shipping markings. The metal latch had rusted slightly, but one detail remained perfectly clear: an engraved brass nameplate. Logan's breathing stopped. His flashlight trembled ever so slightly. Walter followed the beam. "What is it?" Logan stepped closer. He reached out slowly, almost afraid to touch it. His fingers brushed away a thin layer of dust. The engraved letters emerged one by one. "Commander Nathan Cross's Navy." For several seconds, neither man spoke. Walter looked at Logan. "You know him?" Logan never answered. His face had turned pale. His heartbeat echoed louder than the silence surrounding them. Commander Nathan Cross, the man who had led Logan through 3 combat deployments, the officer who had carried wounded teammates across enemy ground, the man officially declared dead after the classified operation that had destroyed Logan's unit. Logan stared at the footlocker as though looking at a ghost. His voice barely escaped his throat. "That," he swallowed hard, "belongs to a man who died 8 years ago." Titan quietly walked over. The old German shepherd rested one paw against the weathered military chest, then looked up at Logan, as though saying, "This is why I brought you here." Titan never looked away from Logan. The old German shepherd rested one weathered paw against the military footlocker as though guarding it, the same way he had guarded wounded teammates years ago. Logan slowly knelt. His fingertips hovered above the brass nameplate. Commander Nathan Cross. There was no mistake. The scratches across the lid, the faded Navy inventory markings, even the dent in one corner. Logan remembered exactly when it had happened. Afghanistan. A helicopter loading ramp. Nathan had laughed when the heavy crate slipped and slammed against the metal floor. "Looks uglier than I do now," he'd joked. Logan had laughed with him. 8 years later, that same dent stared back at him beneath the earth of an abandoned Montana drive-in. Walter quietly removed his cap. "I'll give you a minute." Logan nodded without looking up. Titan lay beside the footlocker, waiting. The bunker had become completely silent. No wind, no birds, only the faint hum of Logan's flashlight. His hands finally reached for the steel latches. They resisted at first. Years of dust had settled into every seam. He pulled harder. One latch snapped open, then the second. For several long seconds, he simply stared. His pulse hammered inside his ears. Slowly, he lifted the lid. A familiar scent escaped first. Old canvas, machine oil, paper. Everything inside had been packed with military precision. Nothing had shifted. On top rested a folded American flag, perfectly preserved inside a clear protective sleeve. Logan carefully lifted it out. Beneath the flag lay a stack of sealed envelopes. Everyone carried the same handwriting. Strong, neat, confident. Commander Nathan Cross. The top envelope bore only 3 words. For Logan Mercer. His breath caught. Walter looked over in disbelief. "He knew you'd find this." Logan slowly shook his head. "That's impossible." He turned the envelope over. The seal remained intact. No address, no stamp. Just his name. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside waited a single handwritten letter. He unfolded the pages carefully. The familiar handwriting immediately transported him years into the past. "If you're reading this, then something finally worked." Logan stopped breathing. Walter quietly stepped closer. "You want me to leave?" "No." Logan swallowed. "You should hear this." He began reading aloud. "Logan, if this letter has reached you, Then Titan did exactly what I prayed he would. If anyone could find the truth, it would be you two. Logan looked down at Titan. The old dog quietly watched him, as though he'd been carrying out orders all along. He continued reading. I know what the official reports will say about our final mission. I know what they'll say about me, about the team, about the men we lost. They're lying. Walter slowly lowered himself onto a nearby crate. Logan's voice grew quieter. I couldn't stop what happened overseas, but I could stop the truth from dying with me. He turned another page. I brought everything here because there was only one place no one would ever think to search. Arthur Hollis was one of my oldest friends. He promised to protect it until someone worthy came. Walter whispered softly. Arthur. His eyes filled with tears. He never told me. Logan kept reading. The money was never mine. Neither were the gold coins. Every dollar was gathered legally over many years by veterans who believed one day we'd build a place where broken soldiers could come home. He looked around the bunker. Stacks of cash, boxes of coins, military crates. Everything suddenly carried a different meaning. It wasn't treasure. It was hope someone had hidden away. The letter continued. If you're reading this, then I failed. I couldn't protect everyone under my command. Logan's voice cracked. He remembered that day. The explosion. The smoke. Radio silence. Men calling for help. The unbearable weight of surviving when others had not. His chest tightened. Breathing became difficult. Not here. His vision blurred. Not now. The bunker slowly disappeared. Concrete walls became rocky hillsides. Flashlight beams became tracer rounds. Walter's voice faded beneath another sound. Gunfire. Someone yelling. Medic! Nathan shouting orders. Smoke rolling across broken ground. Titan barking frantically. Logan stumbled backward. His hands began shaking uncontrollably. The letter slipped onto the floor. His heartbeat exploded inside his chest. He couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The nightmare had arrived while he was fully awake. His eyes searched desperately for exits that no longer existed. Every shadow became danger. Every sound became memory. Walter stood quickly. Logan. No answer. The old projectionist recognized fear when he saw it, but before he could move, Titan was already there. The German shepherd gently pushed against Logan's legs, then leaned his full weight against him. Firm, steady, unmoving, exactly as he had been trained years before. Logan instinctively grabbed handfuls of the dog's thick fur. His breathing remained ragged. Titan stayed pressed against him. Warm, real, present. The old K9 slowly nudged Logan's hand upward until it rested behind his ears. Another familiar routine. Another battlefield lesson. Focus here. Stay here. You're safe. Logan closed his eyes. One breath, then another. The panic slowly loosened. Minutes passed before he finally whispered, I'm here. Titan's tail thumped gently against the concrete. Walter quietly picked up the fallen letter. He waited until Logan nodded before handing it back. You all right? Logan managed a tired smile. I will be. Walter looked at Titan. I've never seen anything like that. Logan gently scratched beneath the dog's collar. He saved my life more than once. Walter shook his head. I think he just did again. Logan finished reading. Nathan's final pages contained inventory lists, boxes of documents, military reports, photographs, film reels, every item carefully catalogued. Near the end came one final paragraph. If justice ever comes, don't let it stop with exposing the truth. Build something better. Build a place where veterans don't have to pretend they're fine. Build the home too many of us never found. Nathan had signed beneath it, then added one final sentence. Take care of Titan. He's the bravest soldier I ever served beside. Logan looked down. The old German shepherd rested peacefully at his feet. Gray covered his muzzle now. The scars around his eyes had deepened with age. His shoulder remained wrapped beneath fresh bandages. Yet somehow, he had carried one last mission all these years. Walter slowly walked deeper into the bunker. His flashlight passed across shelves lined with neatly labeled binders. One title caught his attention. Mission Reports. Another. Financial Trust Records. Another. Veterans Housing Proposal. Walter turned back toward Logan. Arthur wasn't hiding a fortune. Logan folded Nathan's letter carefully. No. He looked around the underground room. He was protecting a promise. Far above them, beyond layers of concrete and earth, evening shadows slowly stretched across the abandoned drive-in. Neither man noticed the faint crunch of tires stopping somewhere beyond the front gate, nor did they see a dark SUV parked among the trees overlooking the property. Inside, someone lowered a camera after taking several photographs of the open excavation. The engine remained off. The windows remained dark. After another long moment, the SUV quietly backed away without making a sound. Whoever had come now knew the bunker had finally been opened. Morning sunlight spilled across the mountains, washing the Silver Ridge Drive-In in soft gold. The storm had scrubbed the sky clean, leaving the pine-covered slopes sharp against the horizon. Logan stood outside the snack bar with a mug of black coffee in one hand. Titan rested beside him. The old German shepherd's shoulder was healing, but Logan could still see the stiffness in his movements whenever he stood too quickly. You earned a day off, Logan said quietly. Titan looked up. Then, true to form, he walked toward the screen. Logan laughed under his breath. I should have known. Walter climbed out of his pickup carrying a cardboard box. I brought breakfast. Inside were biscuits, eggs, and 2 thermoses. Ruth insisted, he explained. She said if 2 stubborn old men and a retired war dog are rebuilding a drive-in, somebody ought to feed them. Logan smiled. I'll have to thank her. You can. Walter looked toward the town. She's expecting you. An hour later, Logan parked Walter's truck outside Ruth Harper's diner. It was the kind of place that had survived because people refused to let it disappear. The bell above the door chimed as Logan entered. Warm air smelled of bacon, fresh coffee, and homemade pie. Several conversations stopped. People recognized him immediately. The veteran who bought the drive-in. A few nodded politely. Others simply watched. Ruth stepped from behind the counter carrying a fresh pot of coffee. She was in her 60s, silver-haired, with kind eyes that somehow managed to notice everything. So, she said, filling Logan's mug before he could answer. How's my newest property owner? Logan smiled, still standing. Barely? Barely. She laughed. I figured. She placed a plate in front of him. You'll eat. I didn't order, you are now. Titan quietly settled beside the booth. Without asking, Ruth disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a bowl of grilled chicken and rice. She placed it in front of the German shepherd. For the hero. Titan looked toward Logan. Only after Logan nodded did the old dog begin eating. Ruth watched with a smile. Best manners I've seen in years. He was trained by professionals. So were you. Logan looked down into his coffee. I've forgotten some of it. Ruth gently shook her head. No. You've just forgotten how much of it is still there. Before Logan could answer, the front door opened. A sharply dressed man in an expensive navy suit stepped inside. He wasn't from Silver Ridge. That much was obvious. His polished shoes had never walked muddy ranch roads. His watch probably cost more than Logan had earned all year. A woman entered behind him. Gray business suit, leather briefcase, confident posture. She surveyed the room before her eyes settled on Logan. The man smiled politely. "Mr. Logan Mercer?" Logan slowly stood. "That's me." The stranger extended his hand. "Victor Ashcroft." Logan shook it. The grip felt practiced, measured. "This is my attorney, Elaine Porter." Elaine offered a courteous nod. Ruth watched the exchange from behind the counter. Her smile disappeared. Victor glanced around the diner. "Would you mind if we spoke privately?" Logan looked toward Titan. The old German shepherd had stopped eating. His ears stood forward. His eyes never left Victor. "Outside," Logan said. The four of them stood beneath a large cottonwood beside the parking lot. Wind rustled yellow leaves overhead. Victor admired the mountain view. "Beautiful country." "It is. I understand congratulations are in order." "For what?" "The drive-in." Victor smiled again. "I've heard quite a lot about your purchase." Logan said nothing. Victor continued. "And..." He paused deliberately. "Your recent discovery." Logan's expression never changed. "What discovery?" Elaine opened her briefcase. "You recently uncovered a concealed underground structure." Neither Logan nor Titan moved. Victor smiled slightly. "I'll take your silence as confirmation." Logan finally spoke. "Who told you?" Victor ignored the question. The former owner had no surviving children. Elaine handed Logan a business card. "My client has represented several historical property interests throughout Montana. We believe there may be estate assets requiring legal review." Logan looked at the card, then folded it once. "You moved fast." Victor shrugged. "Information travels." Logan remembered the SUV. Someone had been watching. Victor noticed the realization crossing Logan's face. "I assure you, Mr. Mercer, my interest is entirely professional." Titan stood, very slowly. His body remained calm, but a low growl rolled deep inside his chest. Victor looked down. "He doesn't seem to like me. He usually likes everyone." Victor chuckled. "Perhaps he's protective." "Perhaps." Elaine removed a folder. "My client wishes to avoid lengthy legal proceedings." She placed a document on the hood of Walter's truck. "We're prepared to offer you compensation." Logan glanced down. One number immediately caught his attention. $450,000. His heartbeat slowed. That amount could change everything. A house, medical care, security. No more sleeping wherever he happened to find shelter. No more wondering how to pay a veterinarian. Victor watched him carefully. "Keep the land. You may continue restoring the drive-in if you wish. We're only interested in whatever remains inside the bunker." Logan remained silent. Victor lowered his voice. "I've looked into your background. You've had a difficult few years. I'd like to solve that." Logan looked up slowly. "You investigated me. I informed myself." Titan's growl deepened. Victor glanced uneasily toward the dog. "I understand loyalty. I respect military service. This offer reflects that respect." Logan looked back toward the mountains. Then he remembered Nathan Cross's letter. "Build something better. Build the home too many of us never found." He looked again at the figure on the page. $450,000. More money than he had ever imagined owning. For one brief moment, he pictured a quiet cabin, Titan sleeping beside a fireplace. No more nightmares beneath broken roofs. Peace. Real peace. The thought lingered longer than he wanted to admit. Victor noticed. Take your time. No pressure. But opportunities like this don't remain forever. Titan suddenly stepped between Logan and Victor. The old German shepherd's ears flattened. His eyes never blinked. Victor instinctively took half a step backward. Elaine looked surprised. I thought you said he was friendly. He is. Logan rested one hand on Titan's back. When he trusts someone, the sentence hung in the air. Victor's smile faded almost imperceptibly. I see. Logan folded the offer neatly, then handed it back. I'll think about it. Victor accepted the folder. That's all I ask. He extended his hand again. This time Logan didn't take it. Victor quietly lowered it. We'll be staying at the Silver Ridge Lodge. He nodded politely. If you decide your future is worth more than old memories, call me. Victor and Elaine walked toward their black SUV. As they drove away, Ruth stepped out of the diner. She had clearly seen enough through the front window. Trouble? Logan watched the SUV disappear around the bend. I don't know yet. Ruth looked down at Titan. The old dog was still staring at the road. He does. Logan slowly exhaled. Nathan had trusted him. Arthur had hidden everything. Titan had led him to it. Now someone with money, lawyers, and unanswered questions had arrived within 48 hours of the bunker opening. The offer hadn't felt like generosity. It had felt like urgency. And urgency usually meant someone was afraid of what remained hidden. Logan rested his hand gently on Titan's neck. I think, he said quietly, we need to find out exactly what Commander Cross left behind. Titan looked toward the distant mountains, then back toward the drive-in, as if he already knew. The answers weren't inside the money. They were still waiting somewhere in the dark. That afternoon, Logan and Titan returned to the drive-in beneath a sky washed clean by autumn sunlight. The mountains surrounding Silver Ridge glowed with bands of gold and crimson as aspens surrendered their leaves to the wind. For the first time since buying the forgotten property, Logan looked beyond the broken buildings and saw what the place had once been. Not a business, a gathering place, a memory. Walter was already waiting beside the projection booth with a toolbox open across the hood of his pickup. I've been thinking, he said. Logan smiled faintly. That's usually dangerous. Walter laughed. Usually. He held up an old brass key. I found this in my garage. Logan examined it. What does it open? The projector. He looked toward the booth. Arthur trusted me with a spare decades ago. You never threw it away? Walter shrugged. Some things don't feel right to throw away. Together they climbed the narrow wooden stairs leading to the projection room. Dust drifted through narrow beams of afternoon light. The massive projector stood exactly where they had left it. Walter gently laid his hand across the cold steel housing. Let's see if this old girl remembers how to breathe. For nearly 3 hours they worked. Walter cleaned gears with careful hands. Logan replaced cracked belts. They oiled bearings that hadn't moved in 16 years. Titan rested near the doorway, quietly watching every movement, despite the bandage still wrapped around his shoulder. Every so often Logan glanced toward him. The old dog seemed content simply knowing everyone was together. Walter finally stepped back. Ready? Logan nodded. Walter pulled the main switch. The ancient electric motor groaned. Nothing happened. Walter tried again. Another groan. Then, a slow turn. The great reels began rotating. Dust burst into the air as mechanisms that had slept for years gradually found their rhythm. Walter's face lit with quiet joy. The projector came alive. Its steady mechanical hum filled the room. It still works. Walter smiled like a much younger man. They built these to outlive us. Logan looked through the projection window toward the giant cracked screen outside. Can it actually project? Walter walked to a weathered cabinet beneath the wall. Inside rested dozens of carefully labeled film reels. He picked one up. No movie title. Logan noticed the handwritten label. Silver Ridge Veterans Picnic-une 2002. This isn't a Hollywood film. Walter gently brushed dust from the lid. No. His voice softened. It's one of Arthur's. They carried the reel downstairs. The old generator Walter had borrowed rattled to life behind the snack bar, feeding just enough electricity into the projection system. The projector lamp flickered once, twice, then burst into brilliant white light. A powerful beam crossed the fading evening air. It stretched over the empty parking lanes and struck the giant screen. The weathered concrete glowed. Not perfectly, not evenly. The long crack running through its center remained visible. But after 16 silent years, light had returned. Walter quietly removed his cap. There it is. Logan looked toward the screen. First light. Walter smiled without taking his eyes off the glowing wall. Arthur always said the place wasn't alive until the light came back. For several long seconds, neither man spoke. Titan slowly walked into the middle of the empty lot. He sat exactly where the first row of cars had once parked. The beam washed gently across his silver muzzle. He looked toward the screen, watching, waiting. Walter carefully threaded the film. You ready? Logan nodded. The projector clicked. Film began moving through the gate. The screen flickered. Shadows danced. Then, images appeared. Not actors, not scenery. People. Families unfolded picnic blankets beneath the same mountains. Children chased one another between parked cars. Teenagers laughed while carrying overflowing boxes of popcorn. An elderly couple danced beside a pickup truck while someone played music from a portable radio. The camera moved slowly through the crowd. Every face looked natural, unposed, alive. Arthur hadn't filmed performances. He had filmed ordinary moments, moments people never imagined would become priceless. Walter suddenly pointed. There. A younger version of Ruth Harper stepped into view behind the snack bar window, smiling as she handed sodas to laughing children. Logan smiled. She hasn't changed much. Walter chuckled softly. She'd appreciate hearing that. The film continued. Veterans embraced old friends. Children climbed onto their fathers' shoulders. Neighbors waved toward Arthur's camera. No one acted for it. They simply lived. Then the projector clicked. Another scene began. Walter frowned. I don't remember this one. The camera approached a group of men standing beside the projection booth. They wore civilian clothes, but their posture was unmistakable. Military. One man turned toward the camera. Logan froze. Commander Nathan Cross, younger, smiling, standing beneath the very screen now glowing before them. Beside him, a younger Logan Mercer, and an energetic German shepherd with a dark muzzle and bright eyes. Titan, years younger, healthy, strong. Logan stepped closer without realizing it. The film showed Nathan kneeling beside Titan, scratching behind his ears. The commander looked toward Logan and laughed at something outside the frame. Though the film carried no sound, Logan remembered the moment perfectly. It had been during a charity fundraiser after their second deployment. Nathan had insisted everyone leave work behind for one evening. "Your commander's smiling," Walter quietly observed. He almost never smiled on base. Logan couldn't take his eyes off the screen. He wanted us to remember life outside the missions. The image shifted again. Nathan rested one hand on Logan's shoulder. The two men looked toward the mountains. Titan sat proudly between them. 3 soldiers, 1 human family, 1 canine partner. Captured forever. Logan felt his throat tighten. For years, his memories of Nathan had belonged almost entirely to the mission that ended in disaster. Explosions, smoke, loss. Now another memory stood before him, one filled with sunlight, friendship, peace. His eyes blurred. He tried to blink the tears away. They came anyway. Walter quietly looked elsewhere, giving him dignity. Logan lowered himself onto the front bumper of an abandoned pickup. Titan slowly walked over. Without hesitation, the old German shepherd rested his head across Logan's knee. Logan buried one hand in the thick fur around Titan's neck. "I forgot." His voice barely carried across the empty lot. "I forgot." He laughed. Walter answered gently. "Trauma has a way of stealing the good memories first." Logan nodded. "I remembered how he died." He looked toward the glowing screen. "I'd forgotten how he lived." The film reached its end. The projector slowed. Its final frames fluttered against the white screen before fading into brilliant light once more. Silence settled across the drive-in. Not lonely silence. Peaceful silence. The kind that arrives after someone tells the truth. Walter switched off the projector. Darkness returned to the valley. But something had changed. Logan no longer saw the drive-in as abandoned. He saw it as waiting. Waiting for laughter. Waiting for families. Waiting for veterans who still carried invisible battles home with them. Nathan hadn't hidden a fortune simply to preserve money. He had preserved a place, a purpose, a promise. Logan looked toward Titan. The old German shepherd's eyes reflected the fading glow still lingering across the giant screen. "You knew." Titan slowly wagged his tail, as if answering the only way he could. Outside the property fence, unnoticed by any of them, a black SUV rolled silently along the county road. It didn't stop this time. But the driver slowed just enough to study the bright rectangle that had briefly returned to life after 16 years. Then the vehicle disappeared into the gathering darkness. Someone else had now seen the light return, and they understood exactly what it meant. By sunrise, frost covered the empty parking lanes like a thin sheet of silver. The mountains surrounding Silver Ridge stood quiet beneath a pale autumn sky. Smoke curled from ranch chimneys in the distance, while the drive-in slowly woke beneath another cold Montana morning. Logan was already inside the bunker. Titan followed close behind. The old German shepherd moved more carefully than before, favoring his healing shoulder, but nothing could keep him away from the room he had spent years trying to lead Logan toward. Walter descended the steel ladder carrying a fresh notebook. "I couldn't sleep," he admitted. "Neither could I," Logan replied. The underground room no longer felt like buried treasure. It felt like an archive, a vault of unfinished promises. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, each packed with carefully labeled binders, film reels, journals, and military storage boxes. Nathan Cross had organized everything, every page, every photograph, every recording, like a commander preparing one final mission. Logan opened another steel case. Inside rested dozens of folders tied together with faded green military tape, Each carried dates, locations, mission codes. Walter carefully lifted one folder. Looks official. It is. Logan recognized the formatting immediately. After-action reports, operational summaries, supply manifests. Only something was wrong. He compared one report against another. The mission names matched. The dates matched. But the casualty numbers didn't. Walter noticed his expression. What is it? Logan laid both reports side by side. These were written about the same operation. Walter leaned closer. They're different. They shouldn't be. Logan turned several more pages. One version listed 6 survivors, another listed 4. The official signatures appeared identical, yet entire paragraphs had been changed. Someone had rewritten history. Walter slowly exhaled. So Nathan kept both. Logan nodded. He kept the original, and the one somebody wanted the government to believe. Silence settled across the bunker. Titan suddenly walked toward another shelf. He stopped beneath several old film canisters. One of them had fallen slightly forward. Logan reached for it. Unlike the others, this one wasn't labeled with a community event. Only one word appeared in black marker. Evidence. Logan carefully carried it upstairs. Walter followed. If Nathan marked something that plainly, he wanted it found. Back inside the projection booth, Walter threaded the reel with practiced hands. The projector hummed to life. Outside, the giant screen glowed white once again. No audience, no applause, only 3 souls beneath the mountains. The image flickered. A handheld camera recording appeared. At first, the picture shook badly. Someone was walking. Heavy breathing filled the soundtrack. Then a voice. Nathan Cross. If you're watching this. He glanced over one shoulder before continuing. Then I didn't make it. Logan stood frozen. This recording had sound. Nathan continued walking through what appeared to be an empty warehouse. I've copied everything. The originals are hidden. If they find this camera before they find the bunker, it won't matter. The image shifted. Boxes. Shipping containers. Military equipment. Nathan pointed the camera toward stacks of wooden crates. Each carried the logo of a private defense contractor. Ashcroft Defense Systems. Walter frowned. Ashcroft? Logan's eyes narrowed. Victor Ashcroft. The same surname. Nathan continued speaking. Equipment marked as destroyed. The camera focused on serial numbers. Was never destroyed. It was sold. The footage changed again. Nathan now stood inside a small office. Documents covered a table. He picked one up. These contracts redirected military equipment through shell companies. Another document. Funds intended for veterans' housing disappeared. Another. The operation our team was sent to protect. Nathan looked directly into the camera. Was built on lies. Logan felt his pulse quicken. The disastrous mission. The one that had haunted him every night. Nathan slowly lowered his voice. My men died protecting a shipment that should never have existed. He paused. If anyone ever tells their families they died because of bad intelligence, don't believe them. The room became painfully quiet. Walter slowly removed his glasses. My God. Nathan continued. They died because someone made millions. The recording ended abruptly. The projector clicked. Only the steady white beam remained. Logan didn't move. For years, he had blamed himself. Every nightmare, every sleepless night, every panic attack. He had believed he'd failed his team. Now another possibility stood before him. Maybe The mission itself had failed them. Walter quietly switched off the projector. Neither man spoke for nearly a full minute. Finally, Walter asked, "What are you going to do?" Logan looked toward the bunker below, find everything. The next 3 days disappeared into endless research. Logan and Walter examined every journal, every film reel, every report. Titan rarely left the bunker entrance. Whenever Logan climbed below ground, the old dog followed. Whenever Logan emerged, Titan emerged first, still protecting, still standing watch. Piece by piece, the story came together. Nathan had spent nearly 4 years secretly collecting evidence after discovering financial fraud connected to defense contracts. Arthur Hollis had agreed to hide everything, not because he wanted money, because he wanted time. Time for the right person to find it. The hidden fortune had never been the destination. It had been the fuel. Money intended to build a veteran's refuge after the truth became public. The evidence mattered more than the gold. Far more. Late on the 4th evening, Logan carried one antique gold coin into town. Walter looked surprised. "I thought you weren't touching any of it." "I'm not." Logan held up the single coin. "Titan needs another veterinary check. The clinic won't work for promises." Walter reluctantly nodded. "Fair enough." The veterinarian cleaned Titan's healing shoulder and smiled. "He's recovering better than I expected." Logan paid with ordinary cash, then walked next door to a small coin dealer recommended by Walter. The elderly owner adjusted his magnifying glasses. He examined the gold coin carefully. His eyebrows rose. "Where'd you find this?" "It belonged to someone I knew." The old dealer weighed it. "It's genuine." He looked up again. "And valuable." Logan thanked him and left without selling it. But he noticed something. As he stepped outside, the dealer immediately reached for his telephone. By the following afternoon, a familiar black SUV rolled slowly through the drive-in gate. Victor Ashcroft stepped out first. Elaine Porter followed. Neither looked surprised to see Logan. It was almost as though they had expected him to be waiting. Victor smiled politely. "I was hoping we'd speak again." Logan folded his arms. "You found me quickly." Victor glanced toward the repaired projection booth. Small towns carry interesting conversations. Titan stepped quietly beside Logan. No growl this time, only complete attention. Victor's eyes briefly drifted toward the giant screen. "I understand you've begun restoring the property. We've begun restoring its purpose." Victor smiled faintly. "A noble goal." He opened a leather folder. "I've revised my offer." Logan remained silent. Victor slid one sheet across the hood of Walter's truck. The number at the bottom had nearly doubled. $800,000. Walter stared at it. Even he struggled to hide his surprise. Victor spoke calmly. "No lawsuits, no delays, no publicity. You keep the drive-in. I take responsibility for everything beneath it." Logan looked directly into Victor's eyes. "Why?" Victor hesitated for only a fraction of a second. "Because history deserves proper preservation." Logan's expression never changed. "No." Victor blinked. "No?" The answer's still no. For the first time, Victor's pleasant smile disappeared completely. He closed the folder with deliberate care. "I hope you understand." His voice remained polite. "History has a way of becoming complicated. So does the truth." Victor studied Logan for several long seconds, then looked down at Titan. The old German shepherd hadn't moved. His amber eyes remained fixed on Victor. Watching. Measuring. Victor finally nodded. "I see Commander Cross trained both of you well." Logan's heart skipped. He hadn't mentioned Nathan's name. Neither had Walter. Yet Victor knew exactly whose evidence lay hidden beneath the drive-in. As the SUV disappeared down the gravel road, Logan quietly turned toward Walter. He already knows what's in the bunker. Walter slowly nodded. And if he knows, he looked toward the mountains. He'll come back. Logan rested one hand on Titan's neck. The old K9 looked toward the darkening tree line. Every instinct inside him had already reached the same conclusion. The fight ahead was no longer about hidden gold. It was about protecting the truth Nathan Cross had died trying to preserve. Logan stood beneath the towering screen as evening settled across Silver Ridge. The mountains glowed deep orange beneath the setting sun. A cold wind swept through the empty parking lanes, carrying with it the smell of pine and approaching winter. Titan sat quietly beside him. The old German shepherd watched the tree line with the same steady focus that had carried him through years of military service. Walter joined them carrying 2 folding chairs. Neither man sat. "There isn't much time," Walter said. Logan nodded. Victor knows. He knows enough. Walter looked toward the silent drive-in. If he files enough paperwork, he can delay everything, for years. Logan remembered Nathan's letter. Build something better. Build the home too many of us never found. He folded the paper carefully and slipped it back inside his jacket. "I'm done hiding." Walter looked at him. "What are you thinking?" Logan slowly turned toward the giant screen. "We let people see it." Walter frowned. "The evidence? No. The memories." Silence settled between them. Then understanding slowly spread across Walter's face. "The films." Logan nodded. Nathan trusted Arthur. Arthur trusted this town. If these people remember what this place really was, they won't let it disappear. Walter smiled for the first time that day. "I've been waiting 16 years to hear someone say that." The next morning began with paint. Not lawyers, not investigators. Paint. Walter climbed onto an old ladder with a roller nearly as long as his arm. Logan patched cracked plywood around the snack bar windows. Titan rested beneath the shade of the projection booth, watching every movement while his shoulder continued healing. Near noon, a pickup rolled slowly through the gate. Ruth Harper stepped out carrying sandwiches. She stopped when she saw the fresh white paint covering part of the old marquee. "You boys finally lost your minds?" Walter laughed. "We're reopening." Ruth stared. "You mean, for one night?" The smile that spread across her face looked almost 20 years younger. She set the food down without another word, then quietly picked up a paintbrush. "You forgot to ask for volunteers." Logan smiled. "I figured nobody would come." Ruth looked at him as though he'd said something foolish. "Honey?" She dipped the brush into white paint. "This town's been waiting longer than you have." By evening, word had already begun spreading. Not because of advertisements, because Ruth talked. She told one customer. That customer told another. A rancher mentioned it at the feed store. Someone else mentioned it during church choir practice. By sunset, nearly everyone in Silver Ridge had heard the same sentence. The drive-ins lighting up again. The following morning, an elderly mechanic arrived with a trailer carrying an old diesel generator. It still runs. A retired electrician appeared with 2 boxes of wiring. "I heard you needed hands." 3 high school boys came after classes ended. "We'll clear weeds." A widow brought homemade chili. "I figured somebody ought to feed everybody." Nobody asked about money. Nobody asked who was in charge. They simply started working. Logan watched quietly from the projection booth. Walter leaned beside him. "You seeing this?" Logan nodded. "They're rebuilding more than a drive-in." Walter smiled. They're remembering themselves. Every evening ended the same way. Titan walked beneath the giant screen, then back toward the bunker, then around the property fence. His patrol, his mission. On the fifth evening, while volunteers packed away tools, Titan suddenly stopped. His ears lifted. His nose caught something carried by the wind. Logan noticed immediately. "What is it?" Titan didn't bark. He moved quickly toward the projection booth instead. Around the back, behind an old storage shed. Logan followed. Fresh tire tracks. Deep. Wide. Not from Walter's pickup. Not from any volunteer. Someone had driven around the back of the property while everyone worked. The tracks stopped near the projection booth. Logan crouched. The soil still felt damp. Recent. Very recent. Walter joined him. "I didn't hear anybody. They came while we were all busy." Titan sniffed along the ground, then stopped beside a cluster of pine trees. Logan's flashlight caught something half buried beneath fallen needles. A cigarette. Still warm. Walter quietly looked toward the road. They were watching us. Logan stood, and getting close. Titan gave one low growl. Not loud. Certain. 2 days later, Logan climbed onto the ladder to reinstall the final marquee letters. Silver Ridge Drive-In. One night only Saturday. The words gleamed white beneath fresh paint. Cars slowed along the county road. Drivers stared. Some honked. Others simply waved. An elderly woman pulled into the parking lot. She stepped out carrying a faded photograph. "I met my husband here." She handed Logan the picture. 2 teenagers stood beside a pickup beneath the very screen now towering above them. "He passed 3 years ago." She smiled through damp eyes. "I'd like to sit where we watched our first movie. You'll have the best spot." She squeezed his hand. "Thank you." After she left, another truck arrived, then another. People brought folding chairs, old movie posters, extension cords, garden tools. One man showed up with an antique popcorn machine he'd restored in retirement. "It belongs here." Logan watched the empty drive-in slowly transform into something alive. Not because money rebuilt it, because people did. Late Friday afternoon, just one day before reopening, a courier arrived carrying a certified envelope. Elaine Porter's name appeared in the corner. Logan opened it carefully. Walter read over his shoulder. Formal notice of intent. The estate represented by Victor Ashcroft formally contests ownership of all personal property recovered beneath the Silver Ridge Drive-In. Any attempt to remove, distribute, or publicly display materials connected to the estate may result in immediate legal action. Walter sighed. He wasn't bluffing. Logan folded the letter. "No." Ruth walked over carrying coffee. "What did they say?" "They're coming." She nodded once. "Good." Logan looked surprised. "Good?" She smiled. "They need to see what they're trying to destroy." That evening, after every volunteer had gone home, silence returned to the valley. Logan climbed into the bunker carrying Nathan's final inventory list. Titan followed. Walter remained upstairs, organizing projection equipment. One line near the bottom caught Logan's attention. Storage compartment, see projection booth, personal testimony, transferred. November 8th. He frowned. There isn't a compartment. Titan suddenly lifted his head. Without hesitation, he climbed the bunker stairs. Logan followed. The old dog walked directly into the projection booth, past the projector, past the film shelves, then stopped beneath the wooden floor. He sniffed once, scratched twice, exactly the way he had beneath the giant screen. Logan slowly knelt. He tapped the floorboards. Most sounded solid. One section echoed. Hollow. Walter looked over. "You hear that?" Logan nodded. Titan scratched again. The hidden space lay directly beneath the projection booth. Walter quietly smiled. Nathan wasn't finished. Logan reached for a pry bar. Outside, darkness settled across Silver Ridge. Tomorrow the entire town would return. Tomorrow Victor Ashcroft would arrive with lawyers. But tonight, one final secret still waited beneath the old projector, and Titan had found it. Logan slid the pry bar beneath the loose floorboards. The old wood creaked but did not break. Walter knelt beside him, holding a flashlight steady, while Titan stood only inches away, his ears forward and his breathing calm. "Easy," Walter whispered. The final board lifted free. A shallow compartment had been built between the floor joists, carefully hidden beneath decades of dust. Inside rested a weatherproof metal case no larger than a briefcase. Unlike everything else they had found underground, this one carried no military markings, only a strip of masking tape. Nathan's handwriting. "For the night the truth comes home." Logan swallowed hard. He knew. Walter nodded slowly. He planned for this. Logan opened the case. Inside lay one final 16mm film reel wrapped in protective cloth. Beside it rested a sealed envelope, a notarized affidavit signed by Commander Nathan Cross, several official documents, photographs, a small digital voice recorder sealed inside a waterproof bag. Walter carefully unfolded the affidavit. It names names. Logan leaned closer. Every page carried signatures, dates, contract numbers, financial transfers. Everything connected the stolen defense contracts to Ashcroft Defense Systems. There was no speculation, only evidence. Walter looked up. "This is enough." Logan picked up the recorder. Its battery indicator still blinked faintly when he pressed the power button. Static crackled. Then Nathan's familiar voice filled the projection booth. "If you're hearing this..." Then the drive-in opened again. Logan closed his eyes. Nathan sounded tired, but calm. "I've hidden the final testimony here because the truth doesn't belong inside a courtroom alone. It belongs where ordinary people can see it. They deserve to know why good men never came home." The recording ended with a single sentence. "Show them." Silence settled over the booth. Walter folded the affidavit carefully. "Tomorrow." Logan nodded. Tomorrow. Saturday arrived bright and cold. Long before sunset, cars began appearing on the county road. First one, then three, then a line stretching nearly half a mile. Families unfolded lawn chairs. Grandparents pointed toward the towering screen while telling stories to children too young to remember the old drive-in. Veterans arrived wearing faded unit caps. Some walked with canes. Others embraced friends they hadn't seen in years. Ruth and half the town worked inside the snack bar. The smell of fresh popcorn drifted across the valley. Teenagers directed parking with handmade flashlights. Laughter returned to the empty field. Walter stood in the projection booth window. His eyes glistened. Full house. Logan looked across the parking lanes. Every space was filled. "I don't think Arthur ever imagined this." Walter smiled softly. "I think he did." Titan slowly walked through the crowd. Children reached down to pet the old German shepherd. Veterans noticed the faded service harness still hanging from his shoulders. Several quietly saluted him. Titan accepted every gentle touch with calm dignity before returning to Logan's side. As twilight settled across the mountains, headlights blinked off one by one. The valley grew quiet. Then another vehicle appeared, A black SUV. Victor Ashcroft stepped out. Elaine Porter followed, carrying a leather briefcase. Victor looked around at the hundreds of people gathered beneath the screen, for the first time since Logan had met him. Victor looked uncertain. He approached slowly. "I strongly advise against this." Logan remained calm. "So do I." Elaine opened her briefcase. She held up the legal notice. Displaying disputed materials could complicate future proceedings. Walter quietly climbed into the projection booth. The projector motor began humming. Victor glanced toward the sound. "Mr. Mercer, this is your last opportunity to reconsider." Logan looked toward the packed parking lanes, then back to Victor. "I already made my decision." The lot lights went dark. A ripple of excitement spread through the audience. The giant screen glowed white beneath the Montana night. Walter's voice crackled softly through the restored speaker system. "Good evening, Silver Ridge." Applause erupted. "It has been 16 years since this projector last welcomed you." More applause. "Tonight," his voice grew gentler, "we're not showing a movie." Confused murmurs moved through the crowd. "We're showing something even more important." The first reel began turning. The screen flickered. Then came Arthur Hollis, walking through the parking lanes with a camera. Children laughed. Couples waved. Families smiled. The audience gasped. People immediately began recognizing younger versions of themselves. "Oh my goodness, that's my father. Look, there's Grandma." Laughter mixed with tears. One elderly rancher removed his hat as his late wife appeared smiling beside an old station wagon. Nearby, a woman quietly reached for her husband's hand as her parents appeared together on the screen for the first time in decades. Walter continued threading reel after reel. The drive-in became a living memory, a community watching its own history return. Then, the final reel, the one Nathan had hidden beneath the projection booth. The picture steadied. Commander Nathan Cross appeared on the screen, not in uniform, standing inside the bunker. The audience fell silent. Nathan looked directly into the camera. "My name is Commander Nathan Cross. If you're watching this." Someone kept the promise. Logan looked across the crowd. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nathan calmly explained the stolen contracts, the altered mission reports, the veterans' housing funds that had disappeared. Photographs filled the screen. Documents, signatures, financial records. Everything matched the affidavit resting safely inside Logan's jacket. Victor's face slowly lost its color. People around him began whispering. A retired Marine sitting 3 rows ahead suddenly stood. I knew him. He pointed toward Nathan on the screen. He wouldn't lie. Another veteran slowly rose. So did I. Then another. One by one. Dozens of veterans stood silently throughout the parking lot. Not in anger, in respect. Nathan's final words echoed through every speaker. If good people stay silent, bad people inherit tomorrow. So don't stay silent. The screen faded to white. Complete silence covered the valley. No applause. No shouting. Only the sound of wind moving gently through the surrounding pines. Victor lowered his eyes. Elaine quietly closed her briefcase. She looked toward him. We should leave. Victor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he watched the blank screen for several long moments. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost every trace of confidence. It's over. He reached into Elaine's briefcase, removed the legal notice, tore it cleanly in half. Then again, and again. The pieces fluttered onto the gravel beneath his feet. There will be no lawsuit. Elaine looked surprised. But no. Victor slowly shook his head. Some things don't belong to the highest bidder. He turned toward Logan. I spent years believing my family name only needed protecting. His eyes briefly returned to Nathan's image frozen on the projector gate. I was protecting the wrong thing. Without another word, Victor walked back to the SUV. Elaine followed quietly. The black vehicle disappeared into the Montana night. No one tried to stop it. No one needed to. The truth had already been seen, and no courtroom could ever make hundreds of witnesses forget what they had watched together beneath the stars. For a long moment, no one moved. The giant screen still glowed white against the Montana night, illuminating hundreds of faces turned toward it. Some were streaked with tears. Others stared quietly into the light, remembering people they had loved, served beside, or buried long ago. Then, from somewhere near the front row, a single pair of hands began to clap. Another joined, then another. Within seconds, the entire drive-in filled with applause. Not for Logan, not for the projector, and not even for the remarkable discovery hidden beneath the screen. The applause was for every veteran whose story had almost been forgotten. Walter removed his old baseball cap. So that's what First Light was really for, he whispered. Logan looked at him. Walter smiled through wet eyes. It was never just about showing movies. It was about bringing people back together. Titan slowly walked into the center of the parking lot. The old German shepherd stopped beneath the beam from the projection booth and quietly sat down. Several veterans noticed him. One by one, they walked over. An elderly Marine knelt first. He gently scratched behind Titan's ears. You did good, old boy. A retired Army medic rested one hand on Titan's back. I've known dogs like you. Another veteran, his left arm missing below the elbow, quietly saluted the aging shepherd. No words were necessary. Everyone understood. The applause gradually faded into peaceful conversation beneath the stars. Families lingered long after the projector had been switched off. Children ran between parked cars, just as they had in Arthur Hollis's old films. Grandparents pointed toward the screen while telling stories that hadn't been spoken aloud in years. For the first time in decades, the Silver Ridge Drive-In felt alive again. The weeks that followed brought something Logan had almost forgotten existed: routine. Every morning he walked the property with Titan. Every afternoon, volunteers appeared without needing to be asked. Some repaired fences, others painted buildings. A retired electrician rewired the projection booth. The local carpenters rebuilt the front ticket booth using reclaimed timber from old Montana barns. High school students cleaned the speaker poles one by one. Ruth Harper somehow managed to keep everyone fed. Whenever Logan tried to pay her, she simply smiled. You can buy breakfast after you become rich. Logan laughed. I don't think that's happening. No. She looked toward Titan sleeping beside the snack bar. I don't think it needs to. 3 months later, the legal proceedings quietly ended. With Victor Ashcroft withdrawing every challenge and Nathan Cross's affidavit fully verified, the court recognized Arthur Hollis's trust exactly as he had intended. The hidden money never became Logan's personal fortune. Instead, it was placed into a nonprofit foundation. Its mission was simple: restore the Silver Ridge Drive-In, provide emergency assistance for homeless veterans, fund trauma counseling, create scholarships for military families, preserve the films Arthur had spent decades protecting. Walter accepted the role of historical director with obvious reluctance. I'm too old for titles. Logan smiled. You're perfect for them. Walter eventually surrendered. But only if I still get to run the projector. You wouldn't let anyone else. You're right. They both laughed. Winter arrived early that year. Snow covered the mountains surrounding Silver Ridge. The drive-in closed for only a few weeks, while volunteers insulated the snack bar and repaired the last section of the projection booth roof. Logan found himself doing something that once would have seemed impossible, sleeping peacefully. The nightmares still visited from time to time. Trauma didn't disappear simply because life became better. But now, when he woke in darkness, Titan was always there. The old German shepherd would quietly lift his head, walk over, and rest it against Logan's knee until the shaking stopped. Just as he had done on distant battlefields, just as he had done inside the bunker. Healing wasn't forgetting. Healing was no longer facing the memories alone. By spring, the Silver Ridge Drive-In opened every Friday night. Some evenings they showed classic westerns. Other nights featured old family films donated by local residents. Once each month, they screened Arthur Hollis's restored community footage. Those nights became the most popular. People laughed at old hairstyles. They pointed toward younger versions of themselves. Children met grandparents who had been gone for decades. History stopped feeling distant. It became personal. Before every showing, Walter always stood beside the projector. He placed one weathered hand on its steel housing, then quietly said the same sentence, "First light." Only then would he switch it on. One warm June evening, nearly a year after Logan had first arrived with nothing but a military rucksack and an aging dog, a county social worker pulled into the parking lot. A teenage boy stepped out beside her, thin, quiet. Everything he owned fit inside one faded backpack. He kept looking toward the ground, avoiding everyone's eyes. Logan recognized that look immediately. He had worn it himself years earlier. The social worker explained softly. His foster placement fell through. "We're trying to find somewhere safe until Monday." Logan looked at the teenager. "What's your name?" "Ethan." "You hungry?" The boy shrugged without answering. Ruth appeared from the snack bar, carrying 2 cheeseburgers before anyone asked. "Sit." She pointed toward a picnic table. "Eating comes before talking." Ethan hesitated, then quietly obeyed. Titan slowly walked over. The old German shepherd sniffed the teenager's hand once before resting his head gently against Ethan's shoulder. The boy froze, then for the first time smiled, a very small smile, but real. Logan noticed it. "So," he looked toward the snack bar. "We've got an extra cot." Walter nodded. "We do, and another volunteer couldn't hurt." Ruth smiled knowingly. "Funny how that keeps happening." Logan looked back at Ethan. "You can stay here until things get sorted out. No one's throwing you out tonight." The teenager looked as though he wasn't sure he had heard correctly. "Really? Really?" Titan's tail thumped softly against the wooden porch, almost as if he approved. Years passed. The Silver Ridge Drive-In became known across Montana for something far greater than movies. Veterans who had nowhere else to go found meals, temporary shelter, counseling, and people willing to listen. Families gathered every weekend beneath the mountains. Children grew up believing the old German shepherd sleeping beside the projection booth had always been there. Many never knew they were quietly petting a decorated military working dog who had once crossed battlefields to save lives. Titan grew slower. His muzzle turned almost completely white. Climbing the projection booth stairs became difficult, so Walter built him a gentle wooden ramp. Every Friday evening, Titan would slowly make his way to his favorite place beside the projector. From there, he could watch the beam of light stretch across the valley, exactly where it belonged. One cool autumn evening, Logan stood outside as hundreds of headlights filled the parking lanes once again. He looked toward the giant screen, then toward the mountains, then down at Titan, resting peacefully beside him. A year earlier, people had laughed at the homeless veteran who spent his last savings on a broken drive-in no one wanted. They had seen only a collapsing screen and forgotten buildings. Titan had seen something else. A promise, a home, a future waiting beneath years of dust. Logan gently rested his hand on the old dog's head. "You brought me here." Titan looked up with calm, familiar eyes. The same eyes that had watched over him in war. The same eyes that had refused to leave the cracked concrete beneath the screen. The same eyes that had quietly carried out one final mission for a commander who believed truth deserved a home. The projector hummed to life. The beam crossed the dark valley. Families looked up together. Veterans smiled. Children laughed. The Silver Ridge Drive-In glowed once more beneath the Montana stars. People often asked Logan about the hidden fortune, about the gold, about the money buried beneath the screen. He always answered with the same quiet smile. The treasure wasn't hidden underground. It was waiting out here. He would gesture toward the rows of parked cars, the veterans sharing stories, the children chasing fireflies, the volunteers serving popcorn, Walter standing proudly in the projection booth, Ruth greeting everyone by name, and Titan peacefully watching over them all. Because the greatest fortune had never been measured in gold. It was measured in healing, in second chances, in loyalty that refused to fade with time, and in one faithful Navy SEAL K9 who never stopped believing his partner would someday find the place they had both been searching for. Home. If this story reminded you that loyalty and courage are worth more than any fortune, comment home below and tell us where you're watching from. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't won with money. They're earned by the people who refuse to give up. If stories about justice, resilience, and ordinary Americans standing their ground mean something to you, subscribe and join us for the next journey.